This is episode 019 with Dr. Janice Hughes.
Working people through the stages to begin to change their mindset about money.
Hi, I'm Dr. Josh Hand, and welcome to the Lifestyle Locker Radio, where we dive into what makes an awesome lifestyle. From relationships to money mindset, nutrition to fitness, emotional health to peak performance, we bring you on an amazing journey to unleashing your human potential. So here's a little bit about Dr. Janice Hughes. She's a leader, a teacher, an author, and a coach to thousands of professionals worldwide. Her unique style of leadership has represented an extraordinarily valued asset to those whose lives she has touched. Janice's blend of intuition, practicality, and incredible focus has made her a role model for all professional women. It is those same skill sets which she has translated into her key role in the new venture, Curemark LLC. As the director of investments for Curemark, she has the great fortune to work for one of the cutting-edge companies in the U.S. Curemark is a startup biotech company which has matured into a major force in the area of autism and other neurological disorders where there is an unmet healthcare need. Janice brings to her new work a sense of urgency for the children with autism, as well as the ability to work in an environment where convention meets unconvention, at the crossroads where health, science, and humanity all meet. Her work at Curemark underscores her life in that anything is possible. No is only a two-letter word, and with good leadership and a great idea, one can change the world. Janice is married to her husband, David Boynton, D.C., with 3 children and lives with her family in Boulder, Colorado. Her unique work includes establishing 30 clinical trial sites across the United States for an FDA-approved Phase 3 clinical trial in autism. She's the director of investors at Curemark, with closing over $100 million in investments, which are all private funding, with a current open round of $150 million. Well, if that doesn't say anything about Dr. Janice Hughes, you're going to learn quite a bit about this amazing woman. All right, Locker Nation, here we have Dr. Janice Hughes. As you just heard in her bio, this is an amazing woman. Absolutely amazing woman. She's got a huge, long history from healthcare to money, and it's only going to get bigger as time goes forward with her. I can see that because I'm looking at her on the screen here in our call. But I want Dr. Janice, so welcome, first of all.
Thank you. Thanks. It's great to be here, Dr. Josh.
Thank you very much. And so what I want to do, and we can go by first names. Let's keep it simple here, right?
Absolutely.
Which is perfect. So, Janice, what I want you to do is, I'm sure people are Googling you, as they're seeing your name on the podcast, but I want you to let's give your story. Let's, I don't want to start at birth, but let's start at like your professional career, where you are and what drove you down the direction to where you are today.
Yeah, I love having that conversation because I think that who we are speaks so loudly, you can't hear what I'm saying. And a lot of times for me, Josh, it's that my journey and going through the things that I've done has done all these huge bifurcations. And what I've realized as a coach is that by talking a little bit about that, it helps other people see that, oh, wait a minute, time is going to make some changes. Or if I embrace those changes, then I'm going to not only learn, but I'm going to open up and reveal next things. So my journey, like I say, has been sort of all over the place. My background I'm a chiropractor. Before getting into chiropractic, though, I actually come from the medical side. So I'm a microbiologist. I have a master's in somatic cell genetics, which is cancer research. And I was actually heading into medical school. And then for myself, I did the whole 180 into much more natural, vitalistic healthcare, which we know is chiropractic. And I did that because I was injured, and being in the medical stream, obviously I had them take a look at me, and I was told that I needed bed rest, that I was going to be in bed for a couple of months. And my dad had gone to a chiropractor for years, and I'd been off at school, though. My sister had even gone for headaches, so chiropractic had really changed the healthcare for my family, but I wasn't around. I was off at school. I was doing all that other, path. And going to my dad's chiropractor, in 3 visits, I was basically 80% better. And it was like a light bulb that went off for me. And I thought, I have to look into this. And because I came from that science background, looking into it for me meant articles, science, research. And at the same time, though, I applied to chiropractic and got into chiropractic as one of these people that, I could have taught microbiology. I could have taught the physiology classes. I could have taught some of those things back in that era. And so for me, it was already the realization, though, that nobody was talking out in the main medical field really about what was so unique about chiropractic. So fast track that as I became a chiropractor, I realized that I had to talk with patients. I had to really educate them to health and well-being and vitalism then in all facets of their lives. And no coincidence that came up. I ended up being asked to speak not just about health, but about a lot of other things. And one of the businesses that was in the same building that I was were financial planners. And they had me start to talk to their clientele, and out in the world, people begin to have conversations about money, but they needed to learn how to have a vitalistic conversation about money. So I started doing all these really diverse things and yet still applying the basic premise that it's about vitalism. It's about embracing or understanding, whether it's about our money, whether it's about the choices of our food, whether it's about the choices of whether we exercise or whether we don't, that those things are all directly impacting us. So then fast track that somehow I got pulled sort of out of daily practice. A lot of people in our chiropractic profession that speak and teach were asking me to start to talk to more people about it. It was almost like I was doing wellness at my stage of practice without a model, without really knowing what the heck I was doing. And that really pulled me into the speaking and coaching world. And then I began to coach not only chiropractors, but a lot of other health practitioners. And then doing that, my personality is obviously to really embrace that vitalistic life or messages that come. And I suddenly had a great chiropractic friend who's a pediatric specialist that literally started to talk to me about, with my background and my speaking, how could I change the conversation about something really big, a discovery with autism, and how could I help her take her idea from the clinical practice into creating a biotech company. So I've done this really strange, diverse, sort of path, but the thread through all of it, who I am, is all about vitalism. And, I have kind of this saying that how we live one day is how we live our lives. And so the choices we're making, the things we're doing, my choice to have this conversation with you and your listeners, it's how do I get to more people? How do I talk about this thing called vitalism? And then now, after having raised hundreds of millions of dollars for our biotech company, for me, it's how do we have that vitalistic conversation about money, with more people? Because I'm the first to tell you, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to raise money. I'm not a financial planner. I do not have a background in finance. But suddenly, taking the passion and the commitment for what I do and health for children with autism and making changes, not just one-on-one, but for the whole population of autistic kids and families with kids with autism, I had to figure out how to raise a lot of money so that we could do the project. Wow. So that's what I'm really excited and passionate about, because if I can do it, absolutely anybody can do it.
Yeah, you have a pretty big why you're doing this, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Knowing you for many years and now like reconnecting after being separated, if you will, right, for a long time. Oh my God, you've come like, I don't want to say full circle is the wrong word. You've had like this trajectory, like a rocket, not even like a little plane taking off, but like somebody that's going into the stratosphere. It's growing and growing. And why don't you touch, because you mentioned, autism and children, and the company that you helped raise, what do you say, hundreds of millions?
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. right? Was it Curemark? Talk about, I mean, if you want to talk, I mean, you don't have to talk a little bit about it because that subject is huge, but I want to make sure we're still going to, have our main focus. But I think this is a very important little piece of the why.
Yeah, it really is. Our founder, the CEO of our company, she basically, in clinical practice, was seeing some things that were incredibly scary and unique about kids with autism. And way before even the statistics now, Dr. Joan Fallon has been working in this field for over 25 years. So that was way before the current statistics about autism. But Joan is such an interesting clinician, and she made some observations about it is the only disease or disorder that has something unique where all of the kids tended to eat the same way. So think about it. If somebody has a heart condition, the diversity, like those people don't all eat the same. Or if you have, again, another disease or disorder, if you look at the population, they don't all eat the same. So what Joan was already seeing clinically is that there was some connection to the food, to the gut, and she had some science ideas behind that. And basically then trained herself to be a stronger clinician and how to do clinical trial design, and did some early studies in her practice and several MD's practices where they did a trial of her discovery and her idea for a product that could then impact, an all natural product that could impact these kids with autism. Because
wow, that's good. Natural is a key word there.
Yeah, because there is a gut connection. But at the same point, it's all natural. It's all obviously very patent protected and all the things that allow you to build a biotech company. But what was happening is Joan knew that there's a lot of other products out there that never get traction or that don't change the conversation around them or a disease or a disorder. And she decided to go a very, very traditional clinical trial route and prove for these kids. We talk about in our company, it's all about the kids. Because not only did this need to get to the kids, but it needs to change the entire landscape and conversation. Because a lot of things that do tend to help these kids aren't covered. Or then there's this whole battle about, wealthier families may be able to do other services or get other resources. But what if you don't have the availability for those resources? So this is kind of the impetus behind our company is how did we build a company and how did we test the product and basically show the world, go the traditional FDA route to show the results and the impact that this can have for kids with autism and ultimately for their families too. So yeah, I could talk for days about that,
but totally.
But we're private. We're a private company, and that there was the need to raise the money to do this kind of work because clinical trials cost millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, holy cow. That's, a little more than I knew about the company in my research looking at it. But, this is pretty powerful that you can raise, and I think about like being a kid and like, going, not that we need more Girl Scouts selling sugar cookies to people, which is obviously not a really good health thing, but it's like, like raising money and something that I may want to do, for a donation in my practice or through Lifestyle Locker and, hundreds of millions. Like how do you even get that mindset to think, okay, I need something with like, was it 9 zeros or something, 8 zeros behind it, right?
Well, I think that, that's sort of my message about money. It's a mindset. It's a complete mindset. And you can't go from zero to saying that you want to have $1 million. That's almost like too big a chasm. It's like, looking across a cavern and trying to figure out how to get to the other side.
Yeah.
But, if you start to think about a few of I'll call it the universal rules or principles about money, and if you begin to work on your mindset and then figure out some action steps that start to move the needle. And so that's what I tend to talk a lot about, and what I'm kind of relaunching to come back and talk to more people about.
Yes.
I used to speak and teach, and I talked a lot about, that law of attraction, or in our mind, I always describe that thoughts become things. But again, what happens is if you're thinking 1 million, as in $1 million, and you have none, or you have 10 cents to your name, that it's such a different vibrational frequency that often the left brain kicks in. You can't do this. You're never going to do this. Or there's so many things around you that show you that you can't do it. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you start to think, how do I change my thinking, my actions, and my energy to move to 100 and 500 and 5,000 and 10,000, and those increments that you can begin to do and time target it, so you're not going to say, oh, well, I'll just settle then for $100 or I'll settle then for $1,000. But if you say, wait a minute, I've got to learn to embrace the thousands so that I can, start to attract the 10,000s so that I can then start to attract the millions, so that's what I want you to see. It's almost like it's a continuum. But the first step is really understanding that it's all in your head. And then if you could begin to work on that and some congruent action steps, you're actually going to be able to change your relationship with money.
Oh, so there's some good words. Relationship with money. And my wife loves it on our intro video. I say money mindset, but the mindset is so huge, growing up and fortunate enough, my father to kind of put like these books in my hands, like The Richest Man in Babylon and all of these different, starting from whatever that was from the 20s or 40s, whatever that was released, but to other books where, there's a consciousness behind the wealthy and there's a consciousness behind the poor. Like if you gave a poor person with, that has that consciousness or that mindset, gave him $1 million, like the lotto, right? The lottery, you give a poor person $100 million. They're gonna make sure that they end up where they were in a very short period of time, just because their mindset can't wrap themselves around that, right?
We see it everywhere culturally. We see it with the lotteries. We see it with athletes. You take a really talented young athlete, and they're usually 20 to 22 years old, and that mindset, and you now dump a $20 million a year contract in their lap, and you watch what happens. Mm-hmm. And it's, there's been how many studies, NFL, NBA players, and the really successful, what they did was they began to change their relationship with money. And it doesn't mean that they didn't blow some money in the beginning, or that changes lives to have a big chunk of money dumped in. But what happens is a high percentage, it's actually 94% of people that get those windfalls or those big contracts that end up in exactly the same place that they started. Now, it might not be in a year. It might take 5 years, depending on the size, or 10 years, but over 94% end up back in the same place.
That's scary. For the listeners out there, whether you're just starting out in a business or you're actually an employee, or if you already have, a bank account that's sizable, or you're worth a lot of money, the mindset is got to be key. So you really got to pay attention. So Janice, keep going. This is good because we can listen to experts that tell us how to invest, which is a very important thing, and where to put money and do things. But there's also behind the scenes that has to happen, maybe even before.
Well, also to talk about that piece, I think that even that concept of giving our money to advisors, giving our money to other people, that's why so many people end up in a problem.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. It's a mindset. So I like to start, or I create this little formula. I like little simple mantras or things that people can say to themselves, like an affirmation. Okay. Or I like people writing down the word money, and then the equal sign, and then the word energy. money equals energy. Everything I've done, years ago, I co-authored a book, The 12 Principles of Financial Leadership. And we almost created it too soon. We created it like 14 years ago, and we called it Inspired Wealth. And it was words that didn't really have meaning for a lot of people at that point, especially financial planners, because that industry is very transaction oriented. And what I found in my own life and why I began to search for this concept of vitalism around money is because as I then, even in my own career and in my own practice, was generating more income than I probably ever thought that I was going to, or more income than my parents had made, it's almost like I gave it away, because what I did is I would go, or I would turn to who I thought was an expert, and I would just make this assumption that they could do something with that for me.
True.
But what I forgot is that it was about my relationship with money. And so I am not here to say, oh, don't work with a financial planner or don't work with a good accountant. But those people all play roles on our team. Why are we letting them make the decisions of what our money represents for us? So if we really embrace this idea, so that's assuming that's for people that are listening that actually have money in their bank account or are fortunate enough to have money to think about investing. Many people are still way back at the beginning where they got to figure out how to make that. But even if you've got it, I would like to suggest that you begin to change your relationship or think about, what can I do that's more a coaching approach to my money or a coaching approach of what to do with my money? But if you're also at the early stage, I want you to feel very empowered because you can actually change it faster. And I like it. If you have nothing, it's almost like you have to dig in or embrace something more to make those changes. Whereas if you have already generated revenue and are used to giving it away or letting other people make choices for you, sometimes it's actually more difficult to change that model.
Yeah.
So I think it applies all across the spectrum, because you look at how many people did grow up in wealthy families, but weren't, say, like your parents. What your parents did was they coached you. They gave you amazing books. They gave you amazing resources that taught you how to think differently about it. So see, that's the coaching approach. So your parents, besides me knowing your parents and how wonderful they are, your parents taught you how to think about it. And so that's a real key for me, is for people to understand that you are already in relationship with money. Everything you have or everything you don't have, both spectrums, are all based on your current thinking and relationship with money.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to circle back to one thing you just said. You said people that are maybe starting at zero, that don't have anything, or even that have maybe lost everything. I see that in healthcare and chiropractic in our practice is a lot of people are crisis motivated.
Yeah.
Not that that's necessarily a good thing. We want them to be motivated to have a healthy lifestyle and same obviously financially, but sometimes falling down hard will make you rise up a little higher.
Yeah.
I see that in practice, and I'm sure you've probably seen that with people you've worked with and clients or have you? I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah. Fail forward, fail fast. Because what's happening is when we make mistakes, and that's where, whether it's me talking to young healthcare practitioners or, seasoned practitioners, we've all learned from mistakes that we've made. Well, likewise, we can all learn from money mistakes that we've made, and I really embrace that. If you're making decisions and you're making choices and you're in action, you're going to get faster feedback. So failing is a good thing.
Yes.
Now, it doesn't feel like it at the time, and a lot of it is our emotion around that failure or, what other people around us think. But look at how many people have started businesses and done very, very well. But in that true entrepreneurial spirit, they didn't take money out, because it's not about how much you make. It's about how much you keep.
Yep.
And it's also not then about how much you give to other people to manage. It's what is your relationship with it? But those people who have created these great businesses and then say lose them and go back to zero, why do you think they can get back on the horse and get moving so quickly? Because they've just done a degree. They've just paid a high price for this great learning. So it doesn't mean they're not going to make other mistakes, but they're not going to likely make the ones that they just made.
Yeah.
So I like to call it failing forward, fail fast. Like, don't be afraid to make those decisions. And now the key when it comes to money, I'd rather that you make a $5 mistake than a $5,000 mistake versus a $5 million mistake.
Yes. True. Agreed on that for everybody, including myself.
Yes.
I've been there. Not the $5 million mistake, but but yeah. I've been there.
Yeah.
Failing is scary. But it definitely, what is that saying? Fail once, right? Learn from your mistake. And if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, what are you?
Yeah.
Right? You're not learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like bumping your head on a wall and not wondering why your head's not getting better.
Yep. Completely.
Yeah. So in one of the files you sent me, you have a really cool, it's almost like I don't know if it's a PowerPoint that you use or something, but there's so many great things like, you're a creator, expand who you be, not only what you have type of things. Like these sayings, they're really cool. They're really mindset oriented. And yeah. I don't know if you want to expand on any of those. We definitely have a few minutes here to do that.
Yeah, so that I sent you, and by all means, just offer it to your listeners. It is based on what my co-author and I years ago wrote, this 12 principles of financial leadership. And it comes from her being a financial planner. So she was the traditional financial person. And she and I connected. She basically was a patient of mine all these years ago in practice and said to me, you and I are going to write a book together. And I always thought that my book would have been about health and well-being. And it was based on my co-author, Aileen, that really talked to me about, Janice, you just look at things differently. And you even look at money differently. And so we really took this coaching approach to money, and we went around and around because as a traditional financial planner, she wanted there to be systems in place. She wanted there to be a conversation that could help people build through some steps. So typically back then, and actually still now in sort of that financial planning world, they have what they call the 6-step process, or multiple steps. Different companies, different types of planners will work you through these stages. And her role was asking me a lot more about how to put that into a coaching approach. So the 12 principles are a coaching approach to money.
Okay.
And a coaching approach to changing your relationship with money. So that PowerPoint that I sent you doesn't list out stage 1, principle 1, but each slide is representing one of the 12 principles.
Okay. Got it.
And that links with our book, which we then converted to an ebook, and so it's working people through the stages to begin to change their mindset about money.
Okay, good.
So the first one is what I had described to your listeners about money equals energy. And obviously there's a whole chapter, there's programs, there's courses around that, but it's just even beginning to understand that and thinking differently about your money. And a coaching, I'll call it, piece of homework or action step that I like to give a lot of people is just to be more conscious with what you're doing with your energy. And what I mean by that is if you are a fee-for-service practitioner, or if you have a product that you're selling, widgets, I want you to start to think about what kind of energy do you put into that? And so then ultimately, as you're going to give that or share that, doesn't it make sense that there would be some equal energy or compensation coming back to you? And so it's beginning to think about that every time you then also go to spend your money. Little exercises I like to have people think about is as you go to buy something, is that fueling you? Is that building you a life, or is that building you a lifestyle? Mm. You can ask questions like, this thing I'm about to purchase, how am I going to feel about that in 10 minutes? Or how about in 10 days? Or how about in 10 months? Because that begins to move us, and it doesn't mean we still don't buy things, and I always talk to people about, there's one of the books that has been around for 10 or 15 years called The Latte Factor.
Okay.
And it was all about, if you're buying your latte every day and you're spending $5 on that, then it's like you're just giving that away. Or, do you have enough in other areas, to really be spending that $5 every day? Mm-hmm. Now, I love coffee, so I am not going to tell people not to spend money on coffee. If it's something that is more important to you than something else in your life, or if it's something that brings you great joy to be actually out somewhere purchasing that coffee. But if it's at the expense of something else, then you need to start to take a look at that relationship. Or if you're buying something to kind of, fill your house with more stuff, I'm just asking people to start to take a look at that. It's not, from my role as a coach, it's not my job to say, do this or don't do this. It's tell me why, or what is your why related to purchasing that. So as you start to think about your money differently, because what is the energy that it already took me to create that? And you want to keep your money moving. That's a really important principle. I'm not asking people to hoard their dollars. I'm just asking you to start to think in terms of, is this something that I actually need? Or is it something that I just want? Or is it something that I would merely like? And if you can begin to think about those things as you spend dollars, as you make choices with your dollars, if you can do that for those $1 or $5 lattes, you notice that now you're going to start to do that also with bigger things in your life. So it's really taking a coaching approach. So that's just one example. That's principle number one in the work that my co-author and I did. And like I said, there's a lot of exercises. We built in exercises, or there's action steps you can do with every one of the stages, with every one of the principles.
Wow. That was one. One of 12 we kind of like scratched the surface with. That's good. I think people are going to love that. We're definitely sending them to all of this information. I hope you know that.
Yeah.
Right? Good.
It's great because, this information is a first step. Then it's, what do I do with it? Or the other thing is, I'm coming back into this and going to be starting to put some courses together. By all means, you and I can then talk about how do we help teach the people that you work with some of these same principles? Because that's really, if we can change our own relationship with money, but then if we can also change the conversation about money, you notice how things are going to start to build. And the better we have the group doing, then the more that we're actually going to make this change. And it's really about this concept of vitalism, and then taking a vitalistic approach to your money as well.
That's pretty neat. I like this a lot. More than I thought I was getting here. This is really cool. This is great. Now I got to dig a little deeper. Dig deeper. The value that, the value, but what you're kind of describing, like this spectrum is like, what do people really value? It's like I lived in Florida for a while, and we go down through some of these neighborhoods where, like, you're kind of afraid to open your door, open a window, type of thing. And you'll see like these rundown, beat up homes, like plywood windows, and you'll see a brand new Cadillac Escalade. But their kids can't afford it. They can't afford a pair of shoes for their kids. Yeah. Like that, the value. Do I want it? Do I need it? Do I like it? I mean, I see it. I guess we could see it in every person in every stage of wealth or lack of wealth, right?
And it's not, the real key is it's not about a judgment, because one isn't right and the other's wrong.
Oh, of course, but
it's that every one of us is unique. And you're right that our values, the fingerprint, who we are, just start to get more aware of that and the choices you're making. And especially then by the time you actually do have some money, because here's where I've been really fortunate to coach and work with a lot of business people and entrepreneurs. And a lot of them have no relationship with money still, because now they're giving their money away to somebody to do something else with their money. And then they're wondering why there's problems or a disconnect there.
Yeah.
So, it's at all spectrums of this. And it's really for us to learn individually and not to have someone else say, here's what you should do, or here's how you do it. It's, wait a minute, how do we come up with these principles and how do we make them applicable so that people come up with their own answers?
Exactly. That's so great. Kind of like a pull method versus a push method, right?
Yes.
Like I've heard this quite frequently, and recently is, people talk about farming for things versus hunting. Two very different principles, and even in the money world, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Same principles.
Got it. So that's a lot to digest what we've just been over. So Janice, what I want you to do, please, is I like people to take action steps. I really do. Today, not tomorrow. And I always say this, that tomorrow never shows up for anybody anyway.
Yes.
So I want you to give 3 what you call gold bars of information, and they could all be actionable. But I want to give 3. If you can do that they can go like, you know what, take my headphones out of my ears, or when I get out of the car, I can start doing this now.
Yeah.
Give us 3.
So number 1 is spend at least a day, but preferably a week, tracking what you spend your money on. What do you do with your money? Because that level of awareness alone is going to tie you into this principle, money equals energy. So take that action, just start to track it, and watch what you're doing with it. Number 2 is know your numbers. Gather your numbers of how much does it take to fuel your home, your life, your business per month. Most people actually don't know their number. And the same principle, if you are in a shortfall, well, then there's certain other actions that leads to. If you're in a surplus, there's other actions that leads to. But, so the first principle is track your money, track your spending. Number 2 is know your numbers, because that's going to be very revealing for you. And number 3 is ask somebody for help. And it's not always just the help to cut down. There are great coaches and people out there that'll, help you spend less, that will help you figure out a way to track, or change the amount that you're putting into certain resources. But it's not just about altering your spending. It's really changing your thinking. So ask for help, whether that's asking you so that you can now share that, presentation, that PDF with some people, just even looking at that and thinking about, the money relationship. It may be, just give people my cell phone number, give people my number. As I'm now changing and putting these courses together, I'm looking to make sure it's applicable to people. Not only will I get on the phone with them to answer some questions, but we'll create a piece of our course or our curriculum that we're going to do that actually has meaning for them, and so sometimes people are also hesitant to reach out and ask for help, say from an individual. You can ask for help from a book, so your parents instilled and put in your hands some amazing books. You know, you mentioned it, Richest Man in Babylon. And, you know, in Canadian terms, I'm Canadian. And so my background, there's another book called The Wealthy Barber. And when I go back into the chiropractic university to speak, those are the two Bibles that I suggest that they have. And you can get audiobooks. Audible is amazing for it to be in audio format. You know, you can beg, borrow, and steal. You can borrow somebody's book. You can go to the library and look up those books. So that's really the third, you know, so the first is, you know, track your current spending, you know, get clear on your numbers is the second one. And then number 3 is ask for some input, ask for some help. Because people have like learned that you're not supposed to talk about money or not have these conversations about money. And if you can take an action that allows you to be in conversation about money, your whole world changes really quickly.
That's so great. So great. So Janice, that's awesome. I'm glad you're able to give those 3, and I'll chat with you after about giving your cell phone number out to the world here, but we'll make sure they're definitely going to connect with you.
Yeah, you would be surprised. I can easily say that because I know that it'll probably only be 2 people that do that use it.
Okay, well, I hope more if we do that, right?
Yeah, but that's a very easy thing. It is not so far-fetched. Like, we all live in the technology world. You know, if I'm not picking up, it goes to an answering machine. You know, so again, it's no different than calling your office line. I can give them my landline, whatever that is, but I'm going to tell you that very few people ever go to that next level.
Okay. All right, so then I'm going to finish with this. So, Locker Nation, we want you to unleash your human potential with Dr. Janice Hughes here. So she just put a challenge out. Let's make her phone go crazy so we can drive her nuts, but so she can actually go and help you. So from the bottom of my heart, from Lifestyle Locker Radio, Janice, thank you so much for being on the call today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Wow, what an amazing interview with Dr. Janice Hughes, from autism to the money mindset. Definitely connect with her if she vibes with you, because she's an amazing person and an amazing woman. So go ahead, connect with her. Everything will be in the show notes. And make sure you connect with us on Instagram, on Facebook, on our website. You can now go there. Everything will be in the show notes, all the details. So until next time, Locker Nation, bye-bye.